Hi, I'm Justin Moorman.
And I'm Katie Thornton, and this is the Re-Education of Schools podcast,
where we have open, honest conversations about how to better understand social-emotional learning, trauma-informed care, the whys behind student behavior, and how to help kids navigate it all as they go through school and life. All right, welcome back to our next episode, Community Partnerships with Allie, which I guessed, Allie Masters.
Yeah.
I kind of already messed that up. This should make you feel more comfortable.
This
is how it goes. Like, if I mess up early, maybe you feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
No, we're excited to have you on and excited to be able to talk a little bit. I think Katie has some stuff she's going to introduce you.
Yeah, I love introducing people.
I know.
Thoroughly embarrassing them, so let me do this.
Yeah, I really hate it when she introduces me, so have fun, Allie.
Yeah.
Listen to this part.
Yeah, so I'm super excited to have a very, very close dear friend of mine, Allie Masters, with us today. Allie has had a really neat career in education, started off as a paraprofessional, and then Allie and I both taught structured autism classrooms for many years, and I transitioned my kids up to her and then have become really good friends. And then I think over the pandemic, we really, trauma bonded over.
Yes, we did.
Really helping and supporting kids when I transitioned into being a coordinator. Allie has, in different places, has become a behavior and mental health wellness coordinator for districts, and we just really nerd out about lots of trauma-informed care and listening to other people and approaches and problem solving and attending conferences, listening to books, all the things. And so I'm excited to have Allie here today because she's back in her hometown, really helping and supporting the community in a way that I think is just super neat and cool. That I think when we talk about this trauma-informed approach, we're looking at holistic. It's not just about schools. It's not just about families. It's about the whole community surrounding and helping and supporting. So I'm super excited for Allie to share some initiatives she's taken on in her community in ways that we can start thinking about looking at kids holistically for support.
Yeah. Absolutely. Allie, would you want to just tell us first of all, what's your take on that?
Katie
what's your take on that? Yeah.
Thank you, Katie, for that wonderful introduction. It's super hard for me to talk about myself, so
Sure.
I appreciate you
like
taking
Katie
that on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that you said we like to nerd out because that's what I am. I am a total nerd at heart, and I embrace it. I love reading new research. I love reading all the books and watching podcasts and listening to podcasts. And so yeah, I'm a total nerd about all of this stuff. Just really helping the whole human, not even the whole child. Obviously in education, we want to help the whole child, but really it's about understanding the whole human and their nervous system and how that relates and intertwines with community and their environment. And that's really what I'm passionate about. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, we're excited to have you.
So talk a little bit about like why that does matter, like for you. Like how did you get to the spot where doing this kind of work, maybe specifically with the community partnership side, because we talk so much about schools and just how schools operate. But the reality is that's just a fraction, right? Mm-hmm. That's just such a fraction of what kids need and what just people, like you said, need. And so what about this work really interests you, and why does it matter to you in that realm?
Honestly, it really just came kind of organically through my teaching. When I was teaching, I was able to, in my classroom, really kind of take care of my kids that I had in my happy little classroom. If a need arose, I would just work with the parents to meet that need. And so I didn't really know what I was doing then. I was just doing it.
Sure.
And years and years ago, we had a kid that needed glasses, and the family was really struggling to get the glasses. There's a financial component to getting medical care and glasses, and they just really couldn't come up with how to get this child their glasses. So because the kid needed glasses to function, I just kind of thought, well, I'm gonna help, and I called a couple of eye places and was able to get them to donate some glasses, and the family was able to take the child and get the exam and get the glasses, and everything was fine. I didn't really think anything of it. It was just like you see a need, you meet the need, just to help them function and help them feel like they belonged in that environment, and just to meet the need.
Yeah.
So just little things like that would happen throughout my teaching career. And when I moved into a different aspect of education where I was working with several different schools and lots of different classrooms, it really tugged on my heartstrings that I was not able to have that close connection with the kids and the families to where I could say, oh, there's a need there. Let me help you meet that need. So that was always kind of in the back of my mind when I was working in that capacity in different buildings and with different people. So I think just through experiences is what kind of grew this passion in me to kind of just connect, like be a connector of resources and help people holistically.
I think there are a lot of teachers that would like identify with that too, or people that are working in education. Doesn't even have to be teachers, but that would identify with that story even, right? Like because they see a need and they want to meet it. I think more teachers than not probably land in that spot.
Absolutely.
But I think one of the things that you pointed out, and I'd be interested to hear you talk a little bit more about this maybe, is this idea of intentionality, right? Because you were like, I was almost just doing it because it felt like that was the thing to do. And I think that's where a lot of teachers land. But then I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I feel like you've shifted a little bit now or over the course of your career to instead of like, oh, I might haphazardly help kids as I see needs arise because I want to help. Now I'm like intentionally building partnerships to try to find ways to help. Can you talk about that shift a little bit maybe?
Yeah, it kind of just came through experiences and just where I kind of landed in my career. As the behavioral health and wellness coordinator, that's kind of my job now, is to be more intentional about kind of connecting all kinds of different services, mental health services, educational services, all kinds of different things. So in that capacity, I still had that kind of on my heart as like, I want to just meet these basic needs because that is mental health support, right?
Yeah.
Even further than, connecting someone with a therapist or connecting someone to medical support. If the child doesn't have a winter coat or a child doesn't have their basic needs met at home or a family doesn't have their basic needs met, that is mental health support. So really just kind of drilling down to how we can meet basic needs and how we can really help people on a very basic level to help them get all of those different supports that they need. So yeah, that really just, I don't know, I think just meeting basic needs first, Maslow before Bloom, right? Meeting basic needs first, and then you can move on from there.
Yeah. So what have you found are some like the most useful connections you've made in the community that tie back to schools? Like if somebody's out there listening and thinking like, I would love to start building some connections with the community, but like I don't know where the best place is to start first. Obviously every community is a little bit different and has different resources, but what advice might you give? Like, hey, these are some of the helpful directions to go.
Yeah. So first I'll talk about like, you have to just be willing to be vulnerable and just ask. Just ask.
Yeah.
And that was really the hardest part for me. It's hard for me to go, and it's hard for anyone to ask for help. And that's what I think is hard for a lot of the families is they don't want to say like, hey, I need help. I can't feed my kids or I can't get my child glasses. Like
Can't pay rent.
It's
this month.
really
Yeah.
hard to ask for help. So for me, that's been the hardest part is to just let myself be vulnerable and ask for help. And try to bridge those needs. So again, in my capacity, in my role right now, I really had it on my heart to figure out a way to meet those needs. And I just started asking. I just started asking people that I would meet, different, district leaders, different people that I would come in contact with and just say, hey, what do you guys do when you have students that have basic needs that they need and like the food pantry is low on food or they're only available like on Tuesdays and it's a Friday, like how do you meet those needs? And I actually met with a superintendent in Sycamore and he told me I said my dream is to be able to just meet these needs on demand. I don't know how to do it, but I want to do that. And he said, Allie, that's not a dream, that's a reality. Let me tell you about it. And I thought, oh my gosh, okay.
Yeah.
And so he told me about an organization called Neighborhood Bridges. And Neighborhood Bridges is a really cool 501c3 that was started in Westerville, Ohio by one guy. His name is Rick Bannister, and shout out to Rick. He is amazing. He kind of had this same idea He was a school board member, and I'm not going to do this justice, but he has lots of experience. But he was a school board member for many years, did a lot of things in his community, and he saw this need in his community in Westerville and started this organization. And he started Neighborhood Bridges. And what Neighborhood Bridges is it bridges kindness, right? That's kind of their little tagline. They bridge kindness. And what happens is they have advocates in the schools. They call them advocates. They're typically counselors or principals or anyone in the school that has kind of a pulse on what the needs are, or has that relationship with the families. You know, like I said, when I was a classroom teacher, I knew what the needs were, and I just met them. But through Neighborhood Bridges, we have advocates that are able to do that. So if a teacher sees something or a family notifies the teacher that they have an issue, that teacher can go to the building advocate and say, hey, I know someone who needs this. It's all anonymous, and I think that's the beauty of it, because it keeps saves the dignity for the family, and they don't feel like they, their needs are broadcasted out everywhere. So it's all anonymous. The advocate will then post that need to a social media website, and then it goes out to our community, and the community is able to then meet that need. It's really, really cool because there's so many people in our community that want to help, and they want to be able to support kids, and they want to be able to support, their neighbors. They just don't know how. So this is a really cool way to do that.
Yeah, I love that it's localized too. Mm-hmm. Like so many times you give money for coats for the wintertime or food, and you just don't really know where it's going. Mm-hmm. It could help large scale, but I love this is really helping your town, your immediate community, and finding that need. And then the requests, what are some of the requests that you guys get through Neighborhood Bridges?
So we just launched in August. So kind of backtrack a little bit, the principal or the superintendent in Sycamore gave me the name of Neighborhood Bridges, and I was like, all right. And again, I mentioned that's my vulnerability shining through, as I was like, oh gosh, I have to reach out to this guy. Like, that's hard for me to do.
Yeah.
So I just thought, I'm doing it. So I just sent an email. I didn't hear back from him right away. He was on vacation, I think. So I called. I was really annoying, and I finally got connected. And
I think we call that persistence.
Yeah.
We don't call that annoying. But that's the spin on that is persistence.
Yeah.
So I finally got connected with him, and within like 2 weeks, we were up and running.
Wow.
It was really, really cool. Now, there's a little bit of groundwork. You have to kind of get a committee together of people within the community. I worked with the superintendent of my district to get this up and running. But again, it's part of that just asking.
Yeah.
Just, saying, hey, I really think this would help our community, and do you want to be involved? And everybody I asked was like, absolutely. I mean, no one's really going to say, no, I don't think I want to help. I don't want to help that community.
We're not really about helping people.
There's no money involved. There's nothing but, time, really, and not a lot of time.
Really. I think I've seen you post things like it's
what
shoes,
are some of the needs?
coats, startup money for a deposit down for an apartment.
Yes, we had some really cool. Again, we just launched in August, and we've helped over, I think it's like 150 families so far, and have had over $5,000 in items and money donated since August.
Yeah,
the end of August too. So it's really been awesome.
And we're filming currly in the mid-January right now. So just to give people time, because they watch this later.
Yeah. So we just things like shoes, coats. We had a family who was experiencing homelessness. They had been living in a vehicle for like 5 months. They had 4 kids, and they had money for rent, but they could not come up with the down payment. So we were able to help them come up with a down payment, and they got into secure housing for the first time in months. What else? A family who needed help with an electric wheelchair for their disabled child. We were able to get them, someone donated an electric wheelchair. They had one and just gave it to us.
But it was just making that community connection for people to be aware that there's things out there. People do care and want to help. It makes me think a little bit, as we're looking at like the whole trauma-informed approach, about that circle of courage, right? Would you mind, because I think this just ties into all this in terms of like the community surrounding people, would you mind talking a little bit about what the circle of courage is and like those basic needs and why this helps support those within the community, the people that live in the community? and it's kind of going rogue. But anyways, I just
Like a pop quiz on Circle of
Yeah.
Courage.
I know.
Hopefully
Well,
hopefully you're
she
well
knows.
versed.
Oh,
She
boy.
knows this well. That's the only reason I can ask her that. Yeah.
So this and jump in if
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
missing anything
Yeah.
because you totally went rogue.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I love this.
Yeah.
So the Circle of Courage, it comes from it comes from like a Native American.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do this justice, but
Yeah.
it's from the Native American.
Well, it was a surprise. So there's only so much.
But there's four basic human.
There's four
basic
basic
human needs is the idea, right?
Yes, four basic human needs that all humans need to really be successful. And we know Native Americans are really based in nature and community, right?
Yeah.
So these four basic needs are generosity, mastery, independence, and
Belonging is the
belonging.
one, yeah.
Yes. How could I not start with that one?
Yeah.
Belonging, mastery, generosity, and independence. And there's all of these things associated with each of those. But if we really think about each one of those things, the person receiving, then the stuff per se, like the shoes or the coat, like that's meeting one of those basic needs.
Yeah.
And also the person donating is also meeting one of those
Generosity,
basic needs.
right?
Generosity, right? And the person receiving would meet the belonging need.
Yeah.
And independence, like
Yeah.
in the case of the wheelchair.
Yeah. It just made me think about that, like how we talk about the four basic human needs are, and then how this community partnerships really helps everyone on both ends, right? For that sense, yeah.
Well, then it ultimately equips, and I think this is one of the things that I've increasingly liked to think about and have been, or maybe realize, I try to point out all the time, is that we're all on the receiving end sometimes, right? And we all have the opportunity to be on the giving end sometimes, whether that's physical things, whether that's helping with belonging, whether that's helping, it doesn't have to always be monetarily or a physical item, but we're all on both of those. And sometimes when we're on like the receiving side, or if we feel like we're on the receiving side more often, it could be easy to feel like I only am receiving. But the reality is that hopefully in receiving, we're able to then, in like the overflowing of that, be able to give as well and help out others also, or help out in a different way. And I think that's an important thing, always for us to remember.
Yeah.
We've talked about that before in a couple of the training things that we've done. Allie, how do you build trust with those families though? Like, it's great to have this out there. And some communities are probably quicker even to access like a program like this, or to ask for help is a little bit more acceptable. But then there are other communities that it's a little bit more of a stigma if you're asking for help or if you're putting yourself out there. How do you, in either case, how do you build a relationship with a family or with families to make it to where they can be vulnerable and feel okay with that by asking for help?
Well, I think as far as as far as Neighborhood Bridges organization goes, the way the system is designed, I think lends itself to those relationships beautifully because it's all anonymous. So we're not posting like a first grade student at X elementary needs this in so-and-so's class, right? So nobody knows who this is going to. And really those relationships are happening at a lower level. So by the time it gets to me and myself and my co-director, Casey Hess, by the time it gets to us, we don't know who this is for. So what happens is the advocate will post the need, and many times the advocate doesn't necessarily know who it's for. They don't have to ask. We rely on the teachers to do those things, the teachers and the people that know the kids the best and the families the best. So really those relationships are already there.
Yeah.
As far as how you build those kind of relationships.
Yeah. So let's go about, let's take
just
it down to that level of teacher. Like, what would you say to the teachers that are those, first layer? How do they know? What are things they can do to like help, to help families know that there are things that are out there that can help them, but then also to feel comfortable? How can they build those relationships?
And this is really kind of simple, stupidly simple, and I think people might roll their eyes at it, but just communication, just talking and being open
Without judgment.
Right.
Without judgment. I think it's a big piece, right?
And just listening with intention. really hear what your families are saying to you. If you're a teacher and you call because, Johnny didn't turn in his homework, and there's, multiple different excuses for why Johnny didn't turn in his homework. And this is a very silly example, but, Dad was at work last night. I had to do something and we couldn't help him. And, I had to run and get food. I don't know. There's lots of different reasons, right? But just hearing and really listening to why and digging in, asking clarifying questions with empathy, not without judgment, right,
Yeah.
Katie?
A lot of families walk or live a different life than you do. But a lot of that is, as we talk about, generational, circumstantial type stuff.
Yeah.
I think without judgment, I think you always have to come back to the place where everyone's doing the best they can at the moment and when they're doing it. And that you may just even be a good listening ear to be like, man, that does sound really hard.
Yep.
Yeah, and here's how I can maybe help support you. Or I can't imagine if I was like that empathy piece.
Or just say, is there anything that I can do to help?
What can I do to help?
Is there anything that can make your life easier? Is there anything that can make this circumstance easier? I think just listening with intent and then just asking those questions.
Yeah.
And they don't have to be hard questions. Just really like, what can I do to take something off your plate?
And here's maybe a plug that maybe you should just remind everybody about not owning the problem or feeling like...
Yeah,
I think you're always good about that. Like, but you can't.
That
you
empathy
can't bring them
versus
home with
sympathy.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, you've got to be able to. Again, we reference that as Chris Voss, right? A lot of times, his example is that idea of sympathy being like you find somebody in the quicksand and you're like, oh my gosh, you're in the quicksand, that looks horrible, and then you get in the quicksand with them to try to help them out, but now you just got two people in the quicksand, right? And as opposed to being outside of the quicksand, realizing that, hey, how can I actually help you out of the quicksand, as opposed to being in there and so into it in the middle of it with you.
Yeah, you can't live someone's life with them, but you certainly can offer the support. And I think that's been a hard balance. I think for both of us, sometimes it's not like being part of the family, right? Yep. It's, offering help and services without is the best as you can.
Yeah. And because that wears on that. And I think we've seen that a lot the last handful of years, right? 5 years, let's say, is teachers and really just people that are in people businesses and in, people services of various ways getting involved so much, because there's been so much kind of intensity over the last 5 years with a pandemic and all of the things, right? And so at first it was almost like heralded as like, look how into it some of the people are getting. They're getting so into it. But then what you realize is like we started watching people just burn out like left and right, because that's actually not really sustainable for the people trying to help either, to get in too deep. So it's a hard balance. It's a hard balance to always find, because you have to do a little bit of both maybe, but it's just difficult. That example is funny because you, with the homework and everything like that, you say it's like a silly example. I just recently, there was a family that I'm aware of that we were working with, and that is almost their exact example of something that they brought up. And the teacher that was actually working with them, it was great to watch her make adjustments to what her plans were. She had a set amount of plans. Like, this is when homework's going home. I expect it back the next day, yada, 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 for any number of reasons, right? And then got this message of, hey, this is why, what can we do? We want to come through, was the message from the parent. We want to come through and meet the expectations. We think it's important. And watching the teacher be like, what if we did it like this? What if we adjusted this way? Instead of being rigid, kind of like what you were saying, instead of being super rigid. But and when you have those relationships built with families, and families believe in you at this point in a bunch of small ways already, then they feel comfortable asking all of a sudden. But if you don't do all the small things, I mean, we talked about the parent-teacher conference episode, right? If the first time you're talking to somebody is at parent-teacher conferences instead of a bunch of like small things leading up, and if the only time you talk to them is at parent-teacher conference, why would they feel comfortable enough with you to, but it's all those like little micro interactions that we have that can help build some of those things. And I think that's super important.
And don't you think, too, being aware that you're not always, sometimes they have connections with other people throughout the educational history, and that it's okay that sometimes it's asking, hey, ask the counselor to text the parent, or, find those resources where if it's not you, just know who those connections that have been made throughout the years. Yeah.
And think of what it does for that child, that family's sense of belonging within that community, within the school community, not just the school community, within the whole community, because when that need is met, that's met by someone within our community that doesn't have any ties with the school necessarily. So just think about what that sense of belonging, how that feels for them. Like, and when we have a high sense of belonging within a community, we're going to have a more robust community. I in my brain right now, I'm seeing that African proverb of, oh gosh, help me out. It's already a child who is not embraced by the community will
burn the village down to feel its warmth.
By the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And that always is in the back of my head, because that's all about, that goes right back to belonging, right?
Yeah.
If you don't feel like you belong, then you're going to figure out other ways, maladaptive ways, right, to make yourself feel like you belong. And we all do it. We all do those things. So this is just another way to really increase that sense of belonging and make people aware that, like, we care about you. Like, this community cares about you.
I'm thinking, too, if you're an organization out there, or how do you, as we know, schools are a big topic, right? Mm-hmm. Behavior in schools. If you're a community member, or if you own a business or a part of an organization, how can they get involved and help support our schools? Because it does take the village. Mm-hmm. Teachers cannot do this alone.
Right, yeah. Right. Just reach out. Reach out to the central office. Reach out if your district has a social worker. Reach out to the social worker. That's what I love about this organization, is that this kind of Neighborhood Bridges kind of reaches out and brings them in. But if there is a business out there that doesn't have this organization in their community, call central office and say, hey, I want to help. I don't know how. What can we do? And then just have that conversation. It all comes down to communication. I know I keep saying that. It's so simple, but it really is just about talking to people, like communication.
Yeah, I think one of the barriers for that, right, is we get everybody, it's easy for anybody to get really sucked into just their own little world, right? We talk about it in education world of, like, you feel like everything is happening inside your classroom. The whole world is happening inside your classroom. Whatever's happening inside your classroom must be what is happening, and everyone's experiencing the whole world, right? And that's just simply not the case. And, like, I've even reference, like, I have to look out the window sometimes, rough day, rough week, right? And look out the window and be like, oh, there's like a neighborhood over there and they have no clue what's happening in here. And that's okay. And when I leave, I will be in that neighborhood and it is, and my life will be different than what it is in this classroom. But I think that's true of every job. I don't think that's just true of education. I think that it's easy to get, kind of hyper-focused on whatever is just happening in front of you and what your day-to-day is, certainly in education. And again, I'm assuming in other jobs, like, you get really focused in on all of the, all the tasks you have to accomplish, checking things off checking the boxes off the list and things like that. And the reality is that if we can step back and maybe very purposefully, intentionally look outside, then we can find that A, there's a lot more people to help than what we thought, and B, there's a lot more places we can help than what we realized needed our help. And I think as a community, that's such an important thing to realize, is that you have resources, no matter what you're doing, that can help people. And because, again, with a organization like Neighborhood Bridges, right, like, it may be some kids need beds, and you happen to work at a woodworking whatever and can build these beds, right? And you would have initially been like, well, I can't help a school. I'm building this kind of furniture and people come and buy it and whatever else. But really, you can help. And you help that school, and you all of a sudden create a situation where a kid can sleep better, now performs better at school because of something you did when you really had no tie, you thought, to school, or they need help with a car and you're a mechanic and you can do something, right? All these things can happen. But you have to be able to look outside yourself and outside of your own little world. And to your point earlier, I think you have to be willing, if you're one of the people that knows some of these needs, you have to be willing to ask, be a little bit vulnerable, and go out and actually seek out some of the help in different ways. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, I think what you said was important, that it is not financial wealth that you have to give. If you're great at organizing, boy, are we always looking for people. If you're good about going out and asking for donations, right? It's your time and your skills are so important to make these things happen. It's the easy job to write the check, and it took 5 seconds, right?
Yep.
It's the hard job to organize and facilitate and gather materials. And just because you may not have the financial wealth to do the donation part of it, your time and gifts are just so needed.
And that's exactly right. That's what we're trying to build with Neighborhood Bridges right now. We're still very new, but I think we're off to a really good start in Miamisburg. But I just posted yesterday actually about a steering committee meeting. So we're asking for more people to come and be involved in our steering committee. And again, there's no commitment. There's no financial commitment. We just want everyone's ideas. And we want everyone to come to the table and say, hey, I've got this idea. Or, hey, I'm skilled at this. I can do this. So again, it doesn't necessarily cost money, right? There's so many different things that we all have to offer. And I think about kids in schools, right? Eventually, they're going to grow up and be part of this community. So the more people from the outside community that we can get involved in schools, the more experiences that we give our kids.
And it becomes normalized. This is just how communities operate.
And it gets in those neural pathways in their brains, right? I'm going to totally nerd out here, so stop me.
No, that's good.
But, when we kind of get set in our ways, right? And we kind of know some of the brain basics behind that, but, it forms those new neural pathways that make them feel safe. We don't feel safe unless we have experiences, multiple experiences where we are safe. So just bringing people in from the community to show kids different ways, right? That it's not just about school. They're going to be in our community later as independent individuals. We want them to feel safe within that community and know what is out there. So going above, or not above, but just beyond Neighborhood Bridges, using community partnerships to have them come into schools and teach different things, having a chef come in and teach kids how to cook. That's basic and simple.
What are some fruits and vegetables? What do they look like? I mean, how many kids just don't have that experience at home?
Right. So there's so many different ways that you can use community partnerships to help really shape that holistic view of kids and help them build that capacity to be better community members and to feel safe within their community and really up that sense of belonging.
Yeah. So all of this sounds good, and it is good. I'm not saying it just sounds good. What are some of the challenges, though? There's always going to be some hard parts of anything that's good that's happening, right? There's always going to be hard parts to it. What are some of the challenges that as people are starting to try to build a community partnership or increase community partnership in their district or in their individual school, what are some of the challenges that they can probably expect to face?
I can speak from my perspective, and I think I've mentioned it already. My biggest challenge was just my own
yourself
getting over myself, right? Getting over my own vulnerability and my own sense of oh gosh, I don't want to ask. That's asking too much, right? You are never going to know unless you ask. And the way I kind of overcame it for myself was just using, because again, I said I'm a nerd, just using some data to support and just say, hey, here's the need. Here's what I'm seeing, and here's what I see that you do. So I'm wondering if we can connect. I mean, just something as basic as that, and really, really just picking up the phone and calling and say, hey, I'm so-and-so with so-and-so, and I see you guys are really great at this. Would you be willing to help? If not, that's fine. But that's a big challenge. It was my personal big challenge, was just being vulnerable enough to ask.
Yeah.
I think also, mindset can be a big challenge. I mentioned we get kind of stuck in our ways, and in my brain right now, I'm thinking of, well, back in my day, it wasn't like this, So I think mindset is a big hurdle, because thinking of community partnerships in schools this way is kind of different. It's not like when I was in school. many, many years ago, we didn't really do much with the community, right? This is kind of
Yeah.
a
It
new
was
thing
separate. Yeah, it
for
was
us,
separate.
right?
School was separate.
Yeah. I think the shift is really, we've got to go around and look at schools like a village, right? The holistic
Yeah.
approach, where now it really is all of our responsibility to take care of and raise and teach kids how to be productive citizens. And it starts with the adults facilitating that, right?
The world has changed too, because when schools were established way back a long time ago, it was, to train kids to do a specific type of labor, right?
Yeah.
And we're not training kids to do those things anymore. Those jobs don't really exist. We have evolved as humans. Our nervous systems are completely different. So we have to make our schools different too.
Yeah.
And I think this is one big part of how we bring that all together to really meet the whole human needs.
Yeah. I think it's that, again, like that it's easy for it to feel overwhelming and intimidating in a lot, for any number of ways, whether it's like, I don't have time, which I think is a big one we hear in education a lot for a lot of things, is there's no time. Because I have all these things that I'm told I actually have to do, which I get, and that makes it hard to do some of this. But really, the reward and the payoff is so high that really not having community partnerships and not reaching out really ends up costing you more time in the end, and ends up costing us more. It's all about where the time is spent, right? Is the time spent on the front end X amount of time, or is a lot more time spent on the back end or throughout the course of a child's schooling career? And I think if we have that perspective, but you have to be able to step back, look outside of a 2-week window, which is what we're really great at looking in, I think, as educators, and be able to see a much bigger picture, which can be hard to do sometimes. And then I think, again, like putting at ease, hopefully, community, people in the community, their minds, that, again, we're not relying on you for everything. It's not that I rely on you, like one person for everything. It's that I'm asking for your specific skill that you're willing to give, and that and a little bit of time. And when you have that from 60 different people or 60 different organizations, all of a sudden, like, nobody's really getting overwhelmed, but they are also filling up their own bucket, I guess, for lack of a better term, by being able to help. And then students are getting, and schools are getting just such a wide range of help then that they're experiencing a lot more, I think, which is great for kids. And they're also having way more needs met than what they would have been if it was just a small group of people trying to meet those needs.
Yeah.
I'm really hopeful for the future of education. I really am, because there are so many services being poured into schools, and so many people in schools that are just embrace this concept, and just the whole child and the whole family, and really just embrace these types of initiatives. So I'm really, really hopeful for the future of education and for kids, right?
Anything else that you want to say that we didn't talk about as far as community partnerships? I mean, I know that's maybe like a huge question as well, but is there anything else that you feel like you haven't said that you're like, oh, I definitely wanted to make sure I said this?
I probably will think of it in about 20 minutes, and I'll be like, darn it.
We'll have you back on and talk.
Yeah.
We could have Ellie come on and talk about 20 different things, I feel like.
Yeah, I would love it.
Yeah,
I would
we'll have you come back and do that. I want to say before we wrap up that I think this is really a call of action.
Is this your, like, what do you want?
Yeah, I'm just going to do it now.
All right.
Okay.
Well, sure.
Okay.
I feel like people are probably thrown off.
Okay, sorry.
Because you didn't
follow the protocol.
Katie, is there anything? What do you want people to walk away knowing? What do you want people to walk away knowing from this episode?
I think this is the call of action for, if you are wanting to know what's going on in schools, great time to get involved. If you have resources, time, energy, I think for a lot of what people have to say about public education right now, go and service your schools.
Yes.
This is our community. We're going to take care of it. If you have time to put it out there on social media or whatever else you want to say about public schools, go put positive energy back into the public school. Yep. Go see how you can help and meet a basic need for someone so they can actually have a educational opportunity. So whether it's your time, your resources, whatever, I would just love this to be a call to action for community members to get more involved, to make these partnerships, to make education possible, and really to support our entire community.
Allie,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I said you just really can't leave it on the backs of the teachers and the principal to do all all of the work, right? Like, we need help. We need help.
I mean, you can, but we're better together.
Yeah.
We're better together,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Done it like that for a long time,
Yeah.
so it could.
Yeah.
yeah, you can,
Yeah.
but better together.
Yeah. What would you, is there anything that you don't have to answer, but is there anything you'd want people, like, if you could hone in, like, this is what I want people to walk away knowing from this episode?
Gosh, that's a loaded question.
I can also go instead if you do want me to go.
No, just I've said this word 5 million times, and I apologize, but just be vulnerable enough to try.
Yeah.
Right. Just put yourself out there. If something like this is on your heart, just do it. Just go for it. You're never going to look back and regret trying something. You are going to look back and regret saying, "Oh, I think I could have been really good at this, but I didn't ask, or I didn't try to make that connection."
Yeah, I think it's good. I think for me, I keep thinking a great resource if you're in a school, a great resource if you're like, where do I start? One, look into something like Neighborhood Bridges, right? But check them out. Check out an organization like this. See what you can find, and maybe what it takes to set something like that up. I think that's a good starting place. I think also realize sometimes we get like really focused on like parents are just our parents, but our parents almost exclusively are people that are out in the community, right? And they are doing something in the community. Start there. That's an easy place to start. If you know your families well, start with knowing what your parents of your students have to offer and what kind of jobs, what kind of world their circle is. Start there and then branch out to people that maybe aren't already attached to your school. But what an easy way to help parents get involved by utilizing what their expertise is outside of just having a child at your school, having a student at your school. So that's a great place to start. And then ultimately, I think, again, gather that information and then start being able to speak out what your dream is as far as being able to help, which I think were two great things. Dropping a pen. Two great things that you said, Allie, is gather information and then speak out what those dreams are, because if you don't start speaking them out, then nobody can help you achieve them. And that's where it starts.
Yeah.
All right. Allie, thanks for coming on with us.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Was it as awful as you thought it would be? No, I'm just kidding.
No, I had some notes here, and I don't think I hit any of the things I wrote about.
Right.
So
That's all right. See, that's why you'll have to come back.
Let's come back and talk about it more.
Well, as always, we just appreciate you guys joining us for this conversation. We know it's always hard to find ways to get involved and to help, and we feel like we're doing so much. Don't do it on your own. Hear that. There is a whole community that's around you as well as an educator. And utilize that community that's around you. Don't feel like you've got to throw it all on your shoulders. If you don't feel like you maybe have time yourself, but you're listening to this, maybe reach out, have somebody that you do feel like maybe this is maybe closer to their job, whatever in your district, in your school, pass this episode on to them, have them listen, tell them that you're encouraged. You maybe want to start doing some stuff like this and building increased community partnerships. Share it with somebody. Share this episode with somebody in your community that isn't involved in schools, that isn't an educator. Help them to be able to hear how big of an impact their involvement is and has on a school district. I think those are great ways to start as well. Share it, like this episode. Is that a thing? I guess
you can like it. Yeah. Justin
I
does
should
not
really
do the
let
tech
you do
around
this
here.
part of it. Yeah. Overall.
Oh boy, Josh. But what I could say, if somebody wants to get in touch with Allie, email our podcast and I'll loop you in
That's great.
with Allie. So just email us and we will get you connected with Allie if you have questions or want to get some more information.
Yeah.
And I do want to say real quick, you guys, thank you for walking the walk, walking the talk. Does that make sense? No.
Yeah.
Everything you talk about on your podcast, I've seen you do. And I really, really appreciate that. And I appreciate the time that we were able to work together. So thank you for this. And thank you for all you do every day, not just on this podcast, because you actually do the things you talk about on the podcast.
We like to keep good company, Allie. So just know that. Yeah.
Right. It would have been really awkward if you'd been like, if you could start walking the walk, that'd be really
Right.
cool. That would have been an awkward way to end it. And like, Josh edit that last part out. Don't let her say that last part. But yeah, we appreciate that. We know that you do the same. And I think that's a big deal. And it's good to just keep moving forward, even when there are those obstacles, no matter what they are, to keep moving forward and to remember why it is that we do what we do. And it's it's good to have people, right? Beyond
Yep.
just us that help us remember that thing. All right. Well, we appreciate you guys again listening. Now let's go out there and do the work.
Let's go do it.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Hey, everybody, let's keep the conversation going.
Like and subscribe below and keep the comments rolling.